January 9th, 2022, North Korea's internet begins shutting down across the country. Government sites stop responding, public servers slowly drop offline, and monitoring systems show the nation fading from the global internet in real time. News outlets assume a major cyber operation, maybe a state response, maybe an intelligence strike, something large and coordinated. But none of that is true. The entire event was caused by one person, working alone, at home, still in pajamas. Online, he is known as P4X. A year earlier, he had opened a research tool sent by another analyst. Nothing looked unusual at first, but the next day, Google announced that North Korean hackers were sending compromised tools to target security researchers. He checked the file again and found a hidden backdoor, an attempt to break into his system. He reported the incident and received one call from a federal agent, but after that, nothing happened. No investigation, no follow-up, no support of any kind. Months went by, and when it became clear that nobody was going to respond, he decided to act on his own. He began mapping North Korea's public internet and discovered how small and outdated it really was. Weak infrastructure, old servers, unpatched systems, everything held together with minimal maintenance. After weeks of studying it, he created a few simple scripts to push the network just slightly beyond what it could handle. One night, he ran them, and within minutes, North Korea's internet began to collapse. After the first outage, P4X didn't react the way most people imagine. He didn't celebrate, didn't post screenshots, and didn't tell anyone what he had done. He simply kept watching the logs on his screen as North Korea's systems struggled to come back online. To understand what was happening, he spent weeks studying the structure of North Korea's public internet. Instead of a large, protected network, he found something surprisingly small and fragile. A few main entry points, outdated hardware, old web servers, and long-ignored vulnerabilities that made the entire system easy to overload. Most countries have backup routes, mirrored servers, and layered defenses. North Korea had almost none of that. If a single server dropped, traffic often had nowhere else to go. A small failure could ripple across the network and take entire services down with it. As he tested different parts of the infrastructure, the same patterns kept repeating. Servers timed out after light traffic. Routers slowed down under basic requests. Even simple automated scans were enough to push old machines to their limits. Nothing he used was advanced. He didn't rely on rare exploits or specialized tools. His scripts were basic, written to send controlled bursts of traffic and measure how each part of the network reacted. What he found was a system barely hanging together. At the same time, outside analysts were confused. They saw multiple outages, starting and stopping across the country, and tried to connect them to political events. Some suspected missile-related tensions. Others thought it might be retaliation from a foreign government. The pattern looked targeted, but nobody could identify the source. All the while, P4X watched quietly from his desk. For him, this had become more than just a response to a hacking attempt. It was a technical project, an unexpected look into how a closed nation keeps its limited internet running, and how quickly it can fall apart under pressure. The more he observed, the clearer the picture became. North Korea's public internet didn't just have weak points, it was weak by design. Old systems, minimal maintenance, and no redundancy meant he could take down large portions of it whenever he wanted, simply by repeating the same controlled steps. By this point, he wasn't guessing anymore. He knew exactly how the network behaved under stress, how long it would take to fail, and how long it needed to recover. And with each test, his confidence grew. North Korea's public-facing internet was not a fortress. It was a structure held together by patches, habits, and luck. And now, someone outside the country understood it better than the people running it. As the outages continued, analysts around the world kept trying to explain what they were seeing. The timing looked deliberate, the drop patterns looked coordinated, and the recovery windows seemed almost planned. To them, it looked like a series of controlled strikes carried out by a professional team. Inside North Korea, technicians were struggling with systems that were never designed to handle this kind of pressure. Many of their public servers were running on outdated software, some more than a decade old. Basic maintenance had been ignored for years, and many machines didn't have proper fail-safes. When a server went down, the rest of the network simply absorbed the shock and often failed with it. Meanwhile, P4X watched everything play out quietly. He wasn't trying to cause chaos, and he wasn't trying to destroy anything permanently. His attacks were controlled and predictable. He knew exactly how much traffic to send, how long to apply pressure, and when to stop before causing any irreversible damage. From his perspective, this wasn't a revenge mission anymore. It was an ongoing experiment. Each outage gave him more information, new weak spots, new failure points, new areas where the network reacted slower than expected. It was like mapping a structure by watching which beams shook when he tapped the walls. North Korea's internet was never built to handle outside interference. It existed mostly for government use, propaganda pages, a few booking systems, and tightly monitored communication routes. The infrastructure was thin, and every part of it depended on the stability of a handful of central servers. Once any of those central points were overwhelmed, everything connected to them fell in seconds. As the days passed, the outages kept repeating in the same pattern. Sites would come back for a short time, then drop again. Some pages never fully recovered before the next wave hit. International observers started tracking the failures like weather patterns, but the source remained invisible. People speculated about foreign governments, intelligence retaliation, cyber command operations, anything that fit the scale of what they were seeing. But nobody suspected a single researcher working alone because the idea didn't make sense. No one expected one person to have that kind of reach, especially against a country known for extreme secrecy. Yet that was exactly what was happening. A nation's public internet was bending under the pressure of simple scripts written by someone sitting at a small desk thousands of miles away. P4X never said anything publicly. He didn't leave any traces, and he didn't want attention. He just kept watching the network rise, fall, and repeat, learning more each time. For him, it was no longer a reaction to what North Korea did. It had become a technical understanding of how fragile their system really was. And the more he learned, the more obvious it became. North Korea had no defense against someone who truly understood how weak their public internet was. As the outages continued, P4X began noticing something else. North Korea wasn't upgrading anything. They weren't patching servers, replacing infrastructure, or adding protection. They were simply trying to restart whatever had failed, hoping it would hold together long enough to get through the day. This gave him a clearer picture of how isolated their technical teams really were. With limited access to modern hardware and almost no connection to international security standards, their public internet existed more as a formality than a functioning system. It was built to look stable, not to be stable. Every time he tested a different part of the network, the same weaknesses resurfaced. Pages timed out under small loads. Routers dropped connections after simple scans. Traffic rerouted through the same narrow paths, creating bottlenecks that collapsed instantly when stressed. To him, it felt less like he was attacking a nation and more like he was exploring an abandoned building. Every step revealed another loose wire, another broken panel, another part barely holding on. Meanwhile, outside observers were treating the outages like strategic signals. Some analysts believed the disruptions were connected to diplomatic tensions. Others thought they were warnings tied to weapons tests. A few speculated that South Korea or the US was quietly probing Pyongyang's cyber defenses. Nobody imagined the real situation. North Korea's public internet was failing because one person understood how to push its old systems past their limit. With each outage, P4X improved his methods. He changed the timing of his scripts, adjusted the pressure, and monitored how long it took for each server to recover. Every detail told him something new: how the network distributed load, which machines rebooted first, and how slowly backup connections came online. What surprised him most was how predictable everything became. North Korea's internet didn't react like a modern network. It reacted like a fragile machine that had been restarted too many times. Once stressed, it needed hours to stabilize, and even then, it never returned to full capacity. The longer he watched, the more he understood that he had complete control over the public-facing layer. He could take down websites, interrupt communication points, slow down propaganda channels, force internal teams into repeated emergency resets, all with the same basic tools he had written at home. But he also knew something else. This wasn't going unnoticed inside North Korea. Someone, somewhere, had to be trying to figure out why their systems were failing. To them, it must have looked like a coordinated external campaign. And the fact that they couldn't identify the source made it even worse. What they didn't realize was that the source wasn't a government, or a command center, or a foreign agency. It was just a researcher sitting quietly behind a single screen, learning how an entire nation's internet cracked under pressure. As the outages stretched on, the outside world continued to guess who was behind them. Cybersecurity forums filled with theories. Some analysts were certain it was the United States flexing its capabilities. Others pointed to South Korea, saying it was a quiet response to rising military tension. A few even suggested Russia or China, imagining complex diplomatic pressure. Not one of them considered the possibility that the campaign was being carried out by a single person operating from a personal computer. Inside North Korea, the situation was even more unclear. Technicians reported repeated failures but couldn't pinpoint the cause. Their public infrastructure lacked proper logging, modern diagnostics, and updated monitoring tools. Every failure looked like a generic system collapse, making it impossible to trace the origin. To them, the outages didn't look like attacks. They looked like unexplained breakdowns, unexpected, frequent, and increasingly difficult to manage. Meanwhile, P4X watched everything from a distance. He wasn't trying to hide in a technical sense. The network simply had no ability to trace him. His traffic blended into normal internet noise, and the outdated systems on the other side could barely stay online long enough to record anything meaningful. He didn't take pleasure in the outages, and he didn't treat it as a victory. From his perspective, this was still a response to something that had been ignored. He had been targeted, and nobody had stepped in. What started as frustration had turned into a structured examination of an entire nation's public digital layer. The more he interacted with the network, the more he realized how little effort it took to disrupt it. He wasn't exploiting deep vulnerabilities or running advanced tools. The infrastructure simply couldn't withstand sustained traffic from a single persistent source. If he wanted, he could bring down nearly every public-facing server in minutes, let it recover, and repeat the cycle whenever he chose. He now understood every weak point, every slow node, and every path that failed under pressure. But he kept his actions limited. He avoided anything that could cause irreversible damage. He never touched internal systems, avoided critical services, and stayed focused only on the public layer. This wasn't about destruction. It was about showing what one person could do when a system was neglected for too long. In the global cybersecurity community, the outages eventually became a footnote. One of those strange events nobody could fully explain. Inside North Korea, the failures faded into routine tech problems. And online, P4X remained anonymous, known only through a single name and a handful of quiet actions that had temporarily pushed a country off the internet. He never announced what he had done. He never asked for credit. He never claimed responsibility. He simply understood something most people didn't. North Korea's public internet wasn't strong, secure, or protected. It was a fragile system held together by outdated machines. And for a brief moment, he was the only person who knew exactly how far it could fall.